The chill of autumn had settled over Blackthorn County, Kentucky, casting long shadows across the rolling hills and the dense forests that surrounded the small township. The year was 1847, and the local folk were busy with harvest preparations, their lives following the same rhythms that had guided their ancestors for generations. But there was one tale that traveled through hushed whispers at taverns and sewing circles. The strange story of the Ravenscroft family who lived in the Grand Manor at the edge of Willow Creek. In Blackthorn County, reputation meant everything, and the Ravenscrofts had plenty of that. The family patriarch, Isaiah Ravenscroft, had arrived from Virginia some 20 years prior with his young bride, Eleanor. Wealth followed them. Money from coal and timber that allowed Isaiah to build the grandest house for miles around. A 3-story mansion with wings stretching east and west like the arms of a giant. It stood as a monument to his ambition. But it wasn't the family's wealth that made them the subject of constant speculation. It was their daughters, 7 of them, all born on the same day, the 7th of November. Not in the same year, mind you, but each daughter had entered this world on that very date across 7 consecutive years. A coincidence that even the most rational minds found difficult to dismiss as mere chance. The Lord works in mysterious ways, some would say, nodding solemnly over their whiskey. Ain't nothing divine about it, others would counter, tapping their noses knowingly. Mark my words, there's something unnatural about that brood. Dr. Thomas Hammond, who had attended the birth of each girl, would simply shrug when questioned. The human body is still largely a mystery to medical science, he would explain, adjusting his spectacles. Though I admit I've never encountered such a phenomenon in all my years of practice. The 7 Ravenscroft daughters, Abigail, Beatrice, Charlotte, Dorothea, Elizabeth, Florence, and Genevieve, ranged in age from 18 to 12 in that fateful year of 1847. Each possessed a beauty that seemed otherworldly, with raven black hair and eyes of such a deep blue they appeared almost violet in certain light. Their porcelain skin remained unmarked by the sun, for the girls rarely ventured beyond the confines of the estate. Isaiah Ravenscroft kept his daughters close, employing tutors for their education rather than sending them to the local schoolhouse. Their mother, Eleanor, once a vibrant woman known for her charitable works, had grown increasingly reclusive with each birth until she scarcely left her chambers at all. Some said her mind had fractured with the delivery of her 7th daughter, that she'd seen something during that final birth that had stolen her sanity. Into this peculiar household came Adam Crawford in the spring of 1847. A young man of 25 with an education from Harvard and connections to Isaiah's business interests back east. He had been invited to stay with the family while overseeing the expansion of the Ravenscroft timber operations. What he found upon his arrival would forever alter the course of his life. The carriage rattled over the uneven ground, each jolt threatening to unseat Adam from his uncomfortable perch. He steadied himself with a gloved hand and gazed out at the rolling Kentucky landscape. After weeks of travel from Boston, the sight of his destination brought both relief and trepidation. Ravenscroft Manor emerged from behind a copse of ancient oaks, its stone facade the color of thunderclouds, windows gleaming like watchful eyes in the afternoon sun. Adam had heard stories. Of course, it was impossible to secure an appointment with Isaiah Ravenscroft without encountering the whispers that followed his name. Tales of unnatural fortune, of a family removed from the community they lived alongside, of 7 daughters who shared a birthday that could not be coincidence. Superstitious nonsense, his father had said dismissively. The frontier breeds fairy tales to explain what simple minds cannot comprehend. Isaiah Ravenscroft is merely a shrewd businessman who values his privacy. The carriage came to a halt before the grand entrance where a servant in formal attire stood waiting. Adam descended, straightening his waistcoat and adjusting his hat. "Mr. Crawford, I presume." The servant's voice was as crisp as his appearance. "I am Phillips, the head butler. Mr. Ravenscroft is expecting you in his study. Please follow me." The entrance hall soared upward 2 stories, dominated by a sweeping staircase that curved like a sleeping serpent. Portraits lined the walls. Stern-faced men and solemn women, their eyes following Adam as he crossed the marble floor. The air inside was cool and smelled faintly of beeswax and something else. Something Adam couldn't quite identify, something like dried herbs and copper. Phillips led him through a maze of corridors, each adorned with luxuries that would not have been out of place in the finest homes of Boston or New York. Turkish carpets, Italian marble statues, Chinese vases. Clearly, Isaiah Ravenscroft's ventures had proven extraordinarily profitable. They paused before a heavy oak door. Phillips knocked 3 times in quick succession. Enter, came a deep voice from within. The study was a sanctuary of dark wood and leather, shelves of books climbing to the ceiling, a massive desk positioned before tall windows that overlooked the estate's southern grounds. Behind this imposing piece of furniture sat Isaiah Ravenscroft. He was not what Adam had expected. The stories had painted a picture of an intimidating figure, a titan of industry with the bearing of a military commander. Instead, Adam found himself looking at a man of medium height and slender build with a neatly trimmed beard that showed more silver than black. Only his eyes matched the descriptions, penetrating, intelligent, and utterly unreadable. Adam Crawford. Isaiah rose, extending a hand across the desk. His grip was firm, but not aggressive. The handshake of a man confident in his position. Welcome to my home. I trust your journey was not too arduous. Thank you, sir. The journey was long but without incident. Isaiah gestured to a chair. Please, sit. Phillips will bring refreshments. We have much to discuss regarding the expansion, but that can wait until tomorrow. Tonight you will dine with my family and rest from your travels. As if summoned by the mention of his name, Phillips reappeared with a tray bearing a crystal decanter and 2 glasses. He poured a measure of amber liquid for each man, then withdrew silently. Isaiah raised his glass. To a prosperous partnership? Adam mirrored the gesture, taking a small sip. The bourbon burned pleasantly, warming his chest. I'm grateful for the opportunity, Mr. Ravenscroft. My father speaks highly of your business acumen. Harrison Crawford is a man of discernment. Isaiah swirled the liquor in his glass, studying its movement. And you are his son in more than name, I'm told. Harvard educated, top of your class, and already making a name for yourself in lumber assessment. You're well informed, sir. A slight smile touched Isaiah's lips. Information is as valuable a commodity as timber or coal, Mr. Crawford. Perhaps more so. He set his glass down. Now, there are matters of household protocol we should address before dinner. Adam nodded, attentive. My wife's health is delicate. She may not join us this evening, though she hopes to make your acquaintance when she is feeling stronger. As for my daughters, Isaiah paused, his gaze sharpening. You've heard the talk, I suppose, the peculiarity of their births. Caught off guard by the directness of the question, Adam hesitated. There have been mentions, yes. 7 daughters, each born on November 7th. A statistical improbability that has fueled no end of speculation. Isaiah's tone remained measured, but something in his eyes had hardened. What you may not have heard is that my daughters are the light of this household, Mr. Crawford. Their welfare is my paramount concern. They have been raised away from the coarse influences of society. Educated to a standard few young women achieve. They are exceptional. I'm sure they are, sir. They are also under my protection. The words hung in the air between them, weighted with unspoken warning. While you reside under my roof, you will treat them with the utmost respect and propriety. Any breach of decorum will result in your immediate dismissal and a permanent severance of relations between our families. Is that understood? Adam straightened in his chair. Absolutely, Mr. Ravenscroft. I assure you, my conduct will be beyond reproach. The tension in Isaiah's shoulders eased almost imperceptibly. Excellent. I value loyalty and discretion, Mr. Crawford. Demonstrate these qualities, and your future in our enterprise will be bright indeed. He rose from his seat. Phillips will show you to your quarters. Dinner is served promptly at 7 o'clock. Until then, feel free to rest or explore the grounds, though I must ask that you respect the privacy of the West Wing. Those are my wife's and daughter's private apartments. With that, the interview was concluded. Phillips materialized at the study door as if he had been listening for his cue. As Adam followed the butler through the house once more, he couldn't shake the feeling that Isaiah's welcoming demeanor masked something deeper, something the older man had no intention of revealing to a newcomer, no matter how well recommended. Adam's room was on the second floor of the east wing, a spacious chamber furnished with a four-poster bed, a writing desk, a wardrobe of polished mahogany, and a sitting area before a small fireplace where flames already danced. His luggage had been unpacked, his clothes pressed and hung with meticulous care. "The bell pulled by the bed will summon assistance should you require it," Phillips informed him. "Fresh water for washing is in the pitcher on the stand. Dinner will be announced by the second bell. Is there anything else you require, sir?" "No, thank you. This is more than comfortable." With a formal nod, Phillips withdrew, closing the door silently behind him. Alone at last, Adam moved to the window. From this vantage point, he could see the manicured gardens extending toward a small lake, and beyond that, the dense Kentucky forest that supplied the Ravenscroft timber operation. The property was vast, and from what Adam could discern, impeccably managed. He turned from the view and settled into the armchair by the fire, intending to gather his thoughts before dinner. Instead, exhaustion from the journey caught up with him, and he soon drifted into a light sleep. A soft tapping at his door roused him. Disoriented, Adam checked his pocket watch. 6:30, he had been asleep for nearly 2 hours. "Yes," he called, rising quickly and smoothing his rumpled clothes. The door opened partially, revealing not Phillips, as he had expected, but a young woman. She remained half hidden behind the door, only her face and a portion of her dark blue dress visible. "Mr. Crawford." Her voice was melodious, almost musical. "Forgive the intrusion. I'm Abigail Ravenscroft, the eldest daughter. Father asked me to ensure you were awake before the dinner bell." Adam hastily ran a hand through his hair, acutely aware of his disheveled appearance. "Miss Ravenscroft, a pleasure to meet you." "Yes, I'm awake, though I confess I dozed off for a moment." A smile touched her lips, full and naturally pink against her pale complexion. "The journey from Boston is exhausting, I'm sure. There's still time to refresh yourself before dinner." She hesitated, then added, "My sisters are quite curious about you. We rarely have guests, you see." Before Adam could respond, a voice called from somewhere down the hall. "Abigail, where have you gone?" The young woman's eyes widened slightly. "I must go." "Until dinner, Mr. Crawford." With that, she closed the door, leaving Adam with only the impression of violet blue eyes and a cryptic smile. He moved quickly to wash his face and change into evening attire. As he adjusted his cravat before the mirror, he reflected on the brief encounter. Abigail Ravenscroft would be 18 if his calculations were correct. The eldest of the 7 sisters born on that supposedly significant date. She seemed perfectly normal, poised, and well-spoken, as one would expect from a young woman of her station. Perhaps the rumors were exactly as his father had described them. Superstitious nonsense born of provincial minds. And yet, something about the girl's manner, a certain watchfulness behind her cordial greeting, had struck him as unusual. The dinner bell interrupted his musings, its resonant tone echoing through the corridors. Adam gave his appearance a final inspection, then made his way downstairs, guided by the soft murmur of voices coming from the dining room. He paused at the threshold, momentarily stunned by the tableau before him. Isaiah Ravenscroft sat at the head of a long mahogany table. But it was the 7 young women arranged along either side that captured Adam's attention. Each possessed the same raven black hair, the same porcelain skin, the same strikingly unusual eye color. They were not identical. Differences in age and subtle variations in their features made each distinct, but the family resemblance was so strong as to be almost unsettling. They turned to him as one. 7 pairs of violet blue eyes regarding him with varying degrees of curiosity and reserve. Isaiah rose from his seat. "Ah, Mr. Crawford, please join us." He gestured to an empty chair near his position. "Allow me to present my daughters." One by one, they inclined their heads as their father named them. "Abigail, my eldest, whom I believe you've already met." The young woman from earlier offered a small smile of acknowledgement. "Beatrice, who has a particular talent for music. A girl of perhaps 17, with a more serious countenance than her sister, nodded formally. Charlotte, whose watercolors have won admiration even in Louisville art circles. This sister, approximately 16, had a dreamier quality to her gaze, her hands delicate and ink-stained. Dorothea, who assists our cook Mrs. Winters, and has developed quite a culinary gift. At 15, Dorothea's features had not yet lost the softness of childhood, though she carried herself with the dignity of someone older. Elizabeth, whose mind for mathematics rivals that of many university men. The 14-year-old acknowledged the introduction with a direct, analytical stare that made Adam feel as though he were being assessed and categorized. Florence, our naturalist, who can name every plant and creature on our grounds. This sister, 13 and slight of build, offered a shy smile, her gaze dropping quickly back to her plate. And Genevieve, our youngest at 12, who has her mother's gift for needlework. The final sister, smaller than the rest, but with the same striking features, studied Adam openly without the social restraint her older siblings displayed. "Ladies, this is Mr. Adam Crawford, son of my associate Harrison Crawford. He will be staying with us while overseeing the expansion of our timber operations." A chorus of "Welcome, Mr. Crawford," followed, the voices blending in such harmony that they might have rehearsed the greeting. Adam took his seat, painfully aware of the 7 pairs of eyes that continued to observe him with unnerving intensity. "Thank you for your welcome. It's a pleasure to meet you all. Mother sends her regrets," Abigail said, addressing her father rather than Adam. "She's resting this evening." Isaiah's expression remained impassive, but something flickered in his eyes. Concern perhaps, or resignation. "Of course. We'll have Phillips take a tray to her later." He clapped his hands once, and servants appeared with the first course. A soup of autumn vegetables, Dorothea explained with quiet pride. Rich with cream and herbs from the kitchen garden. The meal progressed with the formality Adam expected from a household of the Ravenscroft standing. Isaiah directed the conversation, inquiring about Adam's education and experience, discussing the timber market, and occasionally drawing one or another of his daughters into the exchange. They were all remarkably well-spoken, their knowledge extending far beyond the typical education afforded to young women of the era. Yet beneath the polished veneer of the dinner conversation, Adam sensed currents of unspoken communication. The sisters exchanged glances laden with meaning, sometimes seeming to respond to questions that had not been asked aloud. Occasionally, one would begin a sentence that another would complete, as if they shared not just a birthday, but a single consciousness distributed among 7 bodies. "Tell me, Mr. Crawford," Beatrice said during a lull in the conversation. "Do you believe in predestination, that certain events are ordained to occur regardless of human will?" The question, philosophical and unexpected, caught Adam mid-sip. He lowered his wine glass carefully. "I was raised Presbyterian, Miss Beatrice, so the concept is not unfamiliar to me. However, I confess I've always struggled with the idea that our choices are not our own. But some confluences of circumstance are too precise to be coincidence. Wouldn't you agree?" Charlotte interjected, her dreamy voice belying the intensity of her gaze. "Patterns emerge in nature, in mathematics, in human affairs. Patterns that suggest an underlying design." Isaiah cleared his throat. "My daughters are prone to philosophical debate, Mr. Crawford. A consequence of their extensive reading, I'm afraid." "Not at all," Adam replied, genuinely intrigued despite his discomfort. "It's refreshing to engage in substantive discussion. Many young ladies of my acquaintance are limited to conversations about weather and fashion." "Father has never limited our intellectual pursuits," Elizabeth stated, her tone matter-of-fact. "He believes that the female mind is as capable as the male, merely directed toward different spheres of influence. The domestic sphere being our natural domain," Dorothea added with a glance at her father that Adam couldn't quite interpret. And yet, Genevieve piped up, her young voice clear and penetrating. "We remain contained within these walls, observing the world from a distance rather than participating in it." A tense silence followed this observation. Isaiah's expression hardened momentarily before settling back into its customary inscrutability. "The world," he said evenly, is not always kind to those who are different. Genevieve, as you well know. The youngest Ravenscroft lowered her eyes, effectively chastised. Adam felt a flicker of sympathy for the child, coupled with growing curiosity about what difference Isaiah referred to. Beyond their unusual eyes and the coincidence of their shared birthday, the Ravenscroft daughters seemed no different from other well-bred young ladies, except perhaps in the quality of their education and the intensity of their father's protectiveness. The remainder of the meal passed without further philosophical diversions. As dessert was served, a delicate apple tart with cinnamon cream, Isaiah turned the conversation to the next day's business. Phillips will wake you at 7 o'clock, Mr. Crawford. We'll breakfast at 8 and then ride out to inspect the current operation before discussing expansion plans. I've had the ledgers and surveys brought to the library for your review in the afternoon. That sounds excellent, Mr. Ravenscroft. I'm eager to see the operation firsthand. Father, Abigail spoke up, her voice modulated to perfect respectfulness. Perhaps Mr. Crawford would enjoy some music before retiring. Beatrice has been practicing a new piece by Chopin. Isaiah considered for a moment, then nodded. If Mr. Crawford is not too fatigued from his journey, that would be appropriate. All eyes turned to Adam, who recognized the invitation as a courtesy he could not decline without offense. I would be delighted, he said, summoning enthusiasm to mask his exhaustion. The party relocated to the music room, a space dominated by a grand piano positioned before tall windows that would, in daylight, overlook the garden. Now with night fallen, the glass reflected the room's occupants like a dark mirror, creating the uncanny impression that 14 Ravenscroft women were present instead of 7. Beatrice took her place at the instrument with practiced grace, while her sisters arranged themselves on divans and chairs positioned for optimal listening. Adam found himself seated between Isaiah and Abigail, acutely aware of the eldest daughter's proximity and the subtle fragrance of lavender that surrounded her. Without sheet music, Beatrice began to play. The piece was indeed Chopin, one of his nocturnes, Adam thought, though he was no expert in classical composition. What struck him immediately was the technical mastery the 17-year-old displayed. Her fingers moved across the keys with a fluidity that professional pianists would envy, coaxing from the instrument a sound that was at once melancholy and transcendent. As the music filled the room, Adam observed a change come over the other sisters. Their postures shifted subtly, becoming more aligned, their breathing falling into synchronization. Even their expression seemed to harmonize, reflecting the same mixture of rapture and sorrow that characterized Chopin's composition. Isaiah, too, was affected. The stern businessman had closed his eyes, his features softening into something approaching vulnerability. Only Abigail seemed to remain fully present, her gaze darting occasionally to Adam as if gauging his reaction. The piece concluded with a series of delicate, fading notes that seemed to linger in the air long after Beatrice's hands had come to rest in her lap. The silence that followed was profound, almost reverent, broken finally by Isaiah's quiet, "Thank you, Beatrice." The spell broken, the sisters stirred, exchanging smiles and murmured comments. Adam joined in the general applause, genuinely moved by the performance. "You play beautifully, Miss Beatrice," he said. "I've heard that piece performed in Boston concert halls, but never with such feeling." A hint of color touched Beatrice's pale cheeks. "You're too kind, Mr. Crawford. Music speaks most clearly when it emerges from lived experience." Before Adam could inquire what experience a sheltered 17-year-old might have of the profound melancholy embedded in Chopin's nocturne, Isaiah rose from his seat. "It has been a long day for all of us," he announced. "Mr. Crawford, I bid you good night. Phillips will ensure you have everything you need." Taking their cue from their father, the 7 daughters rose and formed a line, each curtsying to Adam in descending order of age. "Good night, Mr. Crawford," they said in unison, their voices once again blending in that uncanny harmony. "Good night, ladies," Adam replied, bowing in return. "Thank you for a lovely evening." As they filed from the room, he noticed that they moved with a synchronized grace, like dancers who had rehearsed their steps until the choreography became second nature. Even young Genevieve, not yet in her teens, carried herself with the poise of a much older woman. Left alone with Phillips, Adam allowed himself to be escorted back to his quarters. The house seemed different at night, the corridors longer, the shadows deeper, the silence more oppressive. At one point, passing a junction where their path intersected with a hallway leading to the west wing, Adam thought he heard singing, a wordless, haunting melody that raised goose flesh on his arms. But when he paused to listen more closely, there was only silence. "Did you hear that?" he asked Phillips. The butler's expression remained impassive. "The old house settles at night, sir. The wind in the eaves can sometimes sound like voices." Adam nodded, though he was certain what he had heard was not the wind. However, he sensed that pressing the issue would yield no further information. In his room, Adam found a fire burning low in the grate and the bedclothes turned down invitingly. Despite his fatigue, sleep eluded him. He lay awake, replaying the events of the evening in his mind. Isaiah's barely veiled warnings, the sisters' uncanny similarities, the strange synchronicity of their movements during Beatrice's performance. There was something not quite right about the Ravenscroft household. Something that went beyond the statistical anomaly of 7 daughters born on the same calendar date. Something in the watchful eyes of the girls, in the protective fervor of their father, in the conspicuous absence of their mother. Adam turned onto his side, staring into the dying embers of the fire. Tomorrow, he told himself, he would focus on the business at hand. The timber operation was why he had come to Kentucky, not to unravel the mysteries of Isaiah Ravenscroft's peculiar family. Yet, as he finally drifted toward sleep, Adam couldn't shake the feeling that he had stepped into a story already in progress, one whose conclusion had perhaps been determined long before his arrival.